Good morning. I'm going to read a bit about the nature of time. I wrote a post in 1999, and I wrote another one about a month ago concerning time, the nature of time, time perceptions. I am just making a video here in the forest. There are a few insects about, flying insects, no-see-ums, mosquitoes may interrupt. And then this isn't a studio. I mean, I don't have a stable camera stand and stuff. I'm reading from my computer. I hope I don't get the computer in the way of the video either. Um, but I wanted to start with a quote from Matthew 24, 11, 14, concerning time. It's on the nature of time when Jesus would return, um, because that's kind of at the end of time for the kind of time that humans experience anyway. And it's just that Matthew 24, 11 through 14. And then shall many be offended and shall betray one another and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations. And then shall the end come. And then I have a couple of other posts to read. I think I'll read the old one first from NPR Online. They had a program that ended maybe 20 years ago that allowed people to write on their website called Your Turn, the show NPR. And this program was called Differing Perceptions of Time. It's from December 27th, 1999, hour 2. And I just wrote a paragraph. The world lines of time experience is relative to the position of the observer. Time passage is intrinsically a part of the density of mass motion. The paradox of why it takes time to journey across nothing. The nothingness of space is of interest. The answer is perhaps implicit in the criterion of the nature of the mass crossing the no thing of space and its relationship to the actual mass force fields, and that no space. Or perhaps it's all a relationship of mass to other mass, and the criterion of being amidst what seems to be space, but isn't, because that's just an appearance to the senses. Then transitioning mass throughout other mass would be the problem if one wanted to space travel. It takes time to figure out that, or at least would for me if it were solvable to one not a physicist. It is good that Albert Einstein contemplated space-time. I'd have run out of it. Happy New Year, Millennium 2000. And then I'll go to the modern article that I wrote. And I named it Dimensions of Time Paradigm. People wonder about time and the reality of time with such questions as is time a subjective and non-objective phenomenon? I believe time is real and objective, though it is also relative, of course, to where one is in the universe. That is because time is basically motion through mass by sentient beings, or at least the experience of changes in mass structure. Mass is an entangled state of energy, of quanta of energy that are in turn emanations or extrusions of fundamental fields. Humans are made of mass and of energy at a more primary level, and the universe is something of an assembly of energy fields with somewhat ordinal consistency regarding mass. The paradox of missing dark mass is somewhat humorous in a way because everything is energy and mass. Even a field fluctuation could perhaps create the appearance of missing non-observable mass to some observers within a given structure of interacting fields. The Higgs field is the culprit, slowing massless particles that have not time elements to them besides, and letting them entangle as field particles, because that field is a semi-steady state of mass entangled and has characteristics of motion where it interacts with other field elements and is observed by sentient beings. Time is said to occur. Time passes through, though locally at its own pace, as some things are thicker than others, and areas that are most thick or that have the most concentrated mass may have the most time in comparison to massless particles that have none at all. There are numerous interesting characteristics about time and its relative characteristics concerning speed of mass passing through the universe, through black holes and so on. Yet I wanted to write about a different aspect of looking at time, one of membrane dimensions. It is possible that the universe is made of two-dimensional membranes that are static, comparable to slides for a slide projector, except the membranes are able to pass through other membranes. So if one sends 3 or 4 membranes in motion through a void and they intersect. The phenomenal point where 4 membranes intersect is what sentient beings experience as the present. Each membrane may have forms upon them that change when they intersect and interact with other membranes. One might design a membrane in combination with other membranes so they assemble various patterns or evolutions combining together where they are present. Maybe the membranes are rewritten that way, so the past is actually static and existent only as a fraction, perhaps a quarter, of what actually occurred, or could be written completely or not at all. In such a paradigm, the future is predestined, yet the predestination is a function of the vectors or tensors of the courses of the membranes, and so variable in a sense or contingent upon nothing acting upon the tensors or the membranes that would intersect. Time does exist for the experience of the sentient beings alive in the present, though it is, like life, very phenomenal. One might view the existence of membranes that intersect to form a universe experience as a grace thing created by God. Since one has no way of knowing if such configuration exists, it wouldn't be right to blame him for that structure. I wondered if a composite membrane universe would allow travel along non-intersecting portions of the membrane, and answered that question for myself. It doesn't seem likely that the phenomenal present motion bubble universe area would allow any sort of particles to travel through non-intersecting portions or membranes. The intersecting universe has 4 dimensions and the non-intersecting just 2 or 3 dimensions. Even massless particles would be non-moving in the lower dimensions of a single membrane, apart from intersections where motion and time is thought to occur. And that was it for this essay, or a couple of essays that I read briefly on the topic of time. Well, that should have been at the end of it. I thought I had something I might add on the nature of time that I would kind of ad lib. I haven't written this down. But I have worked on the topic before. I've given it some thought concerning membranes and how membranes would affect time and predestination. If a membrane were just 1 or 2 dimensions, I'm not really talking about mathematical terms, but if one, again, compares membranes to slides, that one might use under a microscope, but they could pass through one another when they intersected. You could have these membranes, like 3 or 4 membranes floating in space, and where they intersect at that point, I guess it's called a nexus, where they intersect. If they're passing through one another, that experience of passing through one another would be the very present. And everything's static on and pre-written on the actual individual membranes, yet where they intersect, the motion is life and causes the appearance of life and causes the appearance of evolution and virtually everything else, even though it's all predestined, predetermined. Yet, if one thought that God might be able to move those membranes around or adjust speed or time and make them recur, if you wanted, so they intersect at the very same position, or possibly at a different position, there would be, I would think, an almost infinite number of combinations of universes one could get, formations of the present and structures of the universe that one could get by passing membranes through one another, intersecting. The number of dimensions might be equal to the number of membranes. And each membrane just has parts of elements, or I suppose they could change too, but they have parts of elements that combine with the others in the present, temporally and phenomenally. It would complicate things, I suppose, for physicists and mathematicians to have to work out such the dynamics of such a structure. Yet it's interesting. It would allow predestination because all of the material on the membranes is written already, and if you pass them through at a particular location, combination, configuration, it's predestined that they would occur and develop in a certain way. Yet they could easily have not occurred that way. They could sure, theoretically run in reverse, although it's if they were structured such that they could be combined and be meaningful in reverse. Yet the time, they wouldn't actually the mathematics of one on some membranes would be consistent with direction passing in reverse or forward. Yet that would also be phenomenal. One couldn't accurately calculate from the position of the present of existing sentient beings at that moment where those intersections, where the intersection of the present occurs, to the past, all because one could, but it would not necessarily be accurate. The Each of the membranes themselves would not host sentience. It's only in combination that they rise to sentience. And down each sentience is like a different avenue in a sense, or down along each membrane is kind of like a different avenue. You could go down that street, but it doesn't have any information about the other membranes. And but I don't believe that even the calculations of the one membrane, they're kind of lifeless individually. And as I said, one could predestine what would occur. Everything's predestined once the membranes intersect. It's all predestined, yet they could occur in different relationships and start over again. Or it's kind of interesting to think about. And time occurs in all those things, yet time itself is rather static. And that was the end of this edition to this my video.